Hey, this is Chris with Hi-Lux Optics. Recently we had some questions about using a sliding lock ring on the Malcolm short rifle telescopes. So if you're planning to shoot the Malcolm short rifle scopes with a 4570 or a heavier caliber, we would definitely recommend switching the standard lock ring to our sliding lock ring. So we have two sliding lock rings right now. One's our 17 SLR, which has a tail width of about 1/7 inches. And we also have an 18 SLR, which is the tail width of 1/8 of an inch. There are a couple different applications for this. So if you're just planning to use the standard cage type mounts that are found on the Malcolm short scope, the 17 SLR would do just fine. One thing to note, the scope is internally sealed, so you can remove the eyepiece and lock ring without worry. If you're planning to install the new Malcolm Vintage Sniper Competition mount or our Lyman-style mounts on the Malcolm short scopes, you will need to use the 18 SLR. And the reason is the rib on the front ring actually has a slightly narrower width. The 17 SLR does not fit on this, so you will need to use the slightly narrower 18 SLR. In this video, we're going to go over how to switch out the existing lock ring, how to take off the mounts on the short scope, and install the new mount with the sliding lock ring. And we'll go over the different orientations of the sliding lock rings. When you're installing the 17 SLR using the existing cage style mounts found on the Malcolm short 3-power and 6-power scopes, you'll notice that the trough is actually at the bottom of the front ring. In this case, you can use the 17 SLR with a tail facing down. This tail portion sits within that trough on the front ring. If you're going to install our Malcolm 8-power mounts, either the Lyman style or the Vintage Sniper Competition model, you'll need to place the tail facing up. The trough in this case is actually located at the bottom of the plunger, which is located at the top of the ring. So the orientation would be like this. All right, now we're going to take a look at installing the 17 SLR on the Malcolm short rifle telescope. I have a Malcolm 6-power scope right here, and our Malcolm rifle telescopes are internally sealed, so you can remove the eyepiece without worrying about the nitrogen gas escaping. The first step is to remove the eyepiece. There you go. After removing the eyepiece, remove the eyepiece lock ring. The next step would be to remove the rear mount. The rear mount has a spring-loaded plunger at the bottom left side, so we recommend to first remove this cap spring and drop out the spring and the plunger. And the rear mount should slide right off. Next, we need to loosen the screw on the lock ring behind the front ring. Once you remove that screw, sometimes the ring is actually pretty tight, so we like to kind of pry it open a little bit to make sliding it off easier. Once you've done that, the ring should slide right off. Great. So now we'll need to take the 17 SLR, and if you notice, there's the trough on the existing mounts on the short scope is on the bottom. So because of that, we need to put the tail facing bottom. There's a spring-loaded detent in the bottom, so we need to press that down and slide that onto the scope tube. Before we do that, we need to loosen the screw at the top of the 17 SLR. Just make it a little wider. There we go. Once you have the front ring to the desired position, you can tighten up that set screw on the 17 SLR. So the recommended torque setting we have for this is around 5 inch-pounds of torque, or hand tight. That should be good. Great, let's check the locking. Yep, the lock ring stays in place while the front ring is free to move. Great. Next, we'll replace the rear mount. So because we took out the detent, now we have to put it back in. I'm just going to get this screw started by hand. There we go. Great. And then the last step is to replace the eyepiece lock ring and the eyepiece. Great. So once you put the eyepiece back on, you're good to go. Now the scope is configured to slide under recoil. So after every shot, the scope will slide back, or it will slide forward, and you'll need to pull it back to get it set to your original eye relief and your original zero. If you don't pull the scope back, you'll notice a little shift in the point of impact. Great. If you're planning to use our Malcolm vintage sniper competition mounts or our Lyman style mounts on this scope, you will need to use the 18 SLR. So the position of the plunger on the front ring of the 8-power Lyman and the 8-power vintage sniper competition mounts is a little bit different. The plunger is at the top, or the trough is at the top. The front ring of the short scope had the trough at the bottom. So for this scope, the position of the tail needs to be at the top, as such. So I'll go over installing the vintage sniper competition mount on a Malcolm short rifle telescope. So assuming that you have removed the mounts in the same way, now we'll look at installing the 8-power front ring and the 8-power rear mounts on the Malcolm short rifle telescopes. So because the trough is at the top of the front ring, normally this sits on top of the Pope rib on the 8-power scope. Because this scope doesn't have a Pope rib, we'll be using the 18 SLR's tail to act as a substitute. So the first step, we need to loosen up this set screw on the 18 SLR. First, back that all the way out. Great. Now we need to place the top tail of the 18 SLR underneath the top of the front ring, right in the trough, as such. And then slide it onto the scope tube. Once you have that front ring to the desired position, slide that set screw through the right side. Now, tightening it, you may need to remove the thumb screw to access this, but I think I should have enough room. About 5 inch-pounds of torque is perfect. Great, let's check the function. All right, great. The sliding lock ring stays in place while the front ring can move freely. Next, we'll install the rear mount onto the scope tube. So I have our vintage sniper competition mount right here, and the easy way to do it is to drop out the coil spring and the plunger from the bottom left. So we can remove this cap screw right here. Great. Now I'll slide it onto the tube. Once I have it roughly in the right position, I'm going to put the plunger back in. Got it started by hand. Now I'm going to hand tighten it. Great. Now the rear mount's installed. Now the final steps are to put the eyepiece lock ring and the eyepiece back on. There you have it. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe our YouTube channel, and for more videos and more information, go to www.hiluxoptics.com.